I'm with Avi Weiss from the Taub Center. Now, Avi, what is the Taub Center?
It's nice, first of all, welcome. The Taub Center is a socioeconomic think tank. What we do is we do research on all issues that deals with socioeconomics, which is health, education, welfare, labor markets, macroeconomic policy, anything, as I said, that affects the well-being of Israeli citizens. We do not do anything that deals with politics in any way, shape, or form. What we are is we are a very, very academic-oriented, high-level think tank.
Now, you're not government-based, but does the government actually listen to you and develop policies from your report?
Well, they very much do. Because we're not government-based, because we are not funded by the government in any way, and because we carry out very high-level analyses, the government listens to us, and it's pretty much everybody listens to us. All the parties convene with us. They all come and want to hear what we're doing. They want to hear what our results are, and the different ministries all come to hear what we're doing, and they very much base a lot of their decisions on the outcome of the research that we do. And that's our goal. Our goal is basically to make sure that everybody's working based on data, based on the same information, and not just based on submission.
Now, your State of the Nation report is out for 2017. Do you report every year?
We do report every year. We actually have reports that come out every year. We have throughout the entire year. We do a lot of research, as I said. We put out reports every few weeks generally, and about different types of issues. The State of the Nation report is basically, first of all, a summary of what has happened in the past year or in the past recent period with respect to the field. What are the most important issues in health, education, welfare, as I said before, labor markets, and macroeconomic policy. And we take a look at what the major issues are. That's the first part of it, or that's the main part of it. That's what based on that, it's called the State of the Nation. Aside from that, it also presents brand new pieces of research in those different fields, always different issues.
What's changed over the last year?
Oh, so much has changed over the last year. Let's see. Israel is, from a macroeconomic perspective, real wages are increasing very significantly. That's been a very, very large change because that hadn't happened for a while. The standard of living in Israel has been going up. On the other hand, growth is not doing great, and productivity has not gone anywhere. Things become more extreme as time passes, with the differences between the high-tech industry and the rest of the economy. Those are very, very major changes that have been happening. The government allocated very, very significant funds for a new program in Israel called Savings for Every Child, which the government puts money into a closed account for every child up to the age of 18 every single month. And the parents could choose how to invest that money, but it's money that the parents can't touch until the child reaches majority, either 18 or 21, at which point they get a lump sum of money that they can use for whatever purposes they want to, for studies. So just to give your listeners an idea of the sums of money we're talking about, if the government puts in and they invest at a reasonable rate, at the end of 18 years, they will have enough for a college education.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah. So those are types of differences. There are obviously differences in every single field. So I'm willing to, any field you want to expand on, we can do.
Yeah, the Israeli economy, how has that grown over the past year?
Well, the Israeli economy grew at about 1.1%, which is below the average in the OECD. If you take a look again at the two different parts of the economy, so the high-tech is growing very, very quickly, but the rest of the economy is lagging well behind. So that's bringing the entire part down. But that's actually income per capita. And we have to remember that the population in Israel is growing rapidly, which is not happening in pretty much any other developed country. As a result, if you would take a look at how much the GDP grew, not GDP per capita, but how much the actual economy grew, it would be well over 3%, which is a significant amount.
Now, in the UK, we hear a lot about gender pay gap. How is the gender pay gap here in Israel?
Like in most countries, it has certainly decreased, but it still exists to a small extent. If you take a look at, if you try to explain it, in other words, there are econometric models that have been done by Claudia Golden at MIT and many other people, and were done also by one of our researchers here, Hadass Fuchs, who actually took a look at the gender wage gap and tried to understand what it is that caused it. And she found that you're starting from a gap of about 30%. But once you start taking into account things like the number of hours worked, whether people work in full-time positions or part-time positions, the types of jobs taken, the industry people are working in, the education levels, everything else, you end up with a gap of somewhere around 5 to 6%. So it's still a gap, and you don't know why it's happening. It could be happening. There are people who think it's happening because of bargaining power, that women perhaps bargain less with their employers than men do, or things along those lines, other things that we're not measuring in the data. But many believe that there really is no real wage gap anymore. It's caused by other types of issues.
Tell us a little bit about philanthropy here in Israel.
So philanthropy in Israel is actually something that is becoming much larger. It's still not nearly what it is, let's say, in the United States or in England, but it's still it's becoming more significant. If you take a look over the past, I think it's 10 years or so, the amount of philanthropy has quadrupled. The percentage of people who are giving has doubled, and the amount of money each is giving on average has also about doubled. So that's been very, very significant. Men tend to give more money than women tend to give, but in percentages, in terms of generosity, as a percentage of their income, women are actually giving more than men are giving. Other issues, immigrants to Israel who came from places where they tend to give a lot, as they're in the country longer, they tend to lower the amount that they're giving. They become more similar to the rest of the population.
Yeah. What are the developments in social welfare policy?
Well, one development we talked about just before, the savings for every child, was a very, very large change. Aside from that, there's a lot of talk now, which we did a study on, about something called the matching system, in which municipalities basically are the ones who provide welfare services for their citizens. And the way that the amount of money that they have to spend goes is that 25% they provide and 75% is provided by the national government. So the municipality will turn at the beginning of the year to the government and say, here's how much money we need based on what we need to do. And as long as the municipality can commit itself to providing 25%, there's a 3-to-1 matching. Now, the problem is if you take some of the weaker municipalities, then they have difficulty raising the funds in order to be able to supply what they need. And therefore, there are many who feel that this system is not a good system, that it harms the weaker municipalities. So there's been a lot of discussion on that, and we did a big study on that recently.
Is the education system changing?
The system is not particularly changing, but the success rates are changing a lot. You're seeing, for instance, in the Arab-Israeli communities, much higher success in elementary schools, in the amount of sciences that they're studying, the percentage that are going out to that are doing their matriculation exams, the percentages that are going to college, the percentages that are entering the workforce. Those are all very, very large changes that have been happening over time. And you see a closing of gaps between the Jewish population and the Arab-Israeli population.
Technology is a big thing at the moment. Are you seeing more technology taught in the schools than ever before?
Without a doubt, there's a lot more being taught, and and in particular the Arab-Israeli girls, less the boys, but the girls are actually studying a lot of sciences, a lot of technology, much more than they were in the past. The problem becomes when they then have to go and decide what to study in college and what to work in, they tend to go to the more traditional fields of healthcare and of education, and not necessarily using the technology that they acquired during their schooling. And that can be, first of all, because of traditional reasons. That's just what they do. And it could also be because of difficulty in finding jobs in the high-tech sector after they finish there.
Is bullying and ostracization a problem in the schools?
There is actually quite a bit of bullying, but it's something that's improving significantly over time. What you find generally is that, first of all, there's a lot more bullying in the Arab schools than in the Jewish schools, significantly more. As you go up in class, the amount of bullying goes down significantly. Ostracism goes down, and as time has gone on, the amount has gone down in those places where there's more. But if you take a look at percentages, in 61.5% of all classes, there's been at least one instance of reported bullying.
Does social media have a part to play in that?
It has a very large part to play in it. As we all know, that lends itself to ostracism very, very easily. So you do have standard type of bullying, the old type of, being pushed in class, but there's a lot more of this social media type of bullying going on.
Now there's Arabs and Jews in the country. Is there a big difference when it comes to health?
If you take a look at life expectancy, for instance, life expectancy for the Jewish population in Israel is very, very high. It's about 82 years on average, 82.2 years. For the Arab population, it's about 4 years less than that. Most of that is socioeconomically driven, because if you take a look at, life expectancy, we know depends on your socioeconomic status. And if you would just control for that, you're basically explaining pretty much all of the difference. However, there are other differences also. For instance, infant mortality is much larger among the Arab population than among the Jewish population. That's caused to a large extent by marriage within the family. That happens a lot in the Arab populations. It's not nearly as much in the Jewish populations. But also with respect to prenatal testing, which is done a lot more in the Jewish populations than in the Arab populations, that also has a large effect. There are also behavioral issues. The Arab population, the Arab adults smoke a lot more than the Jewish adults do. They have a lot more lung problems. They drive more recklessly, and they have a lot more accidents. There are many, many issues that you can look at and see differences between the two different populations.
And diabetes, of course, as well, is a big issue at the moment.
Diabetes is a big issue for both populations. It's bigger for the Arab population, but that's the largest growing problem inside of the Israeli economy, Israeli population as a whole. Arabs and Jews alike.
Do you always find amazing statistics every year?
Always. There's always more to look for and always more questions to ask. And every answer you get always raises more questions. And that means you always have what to look at and what to find out.
Do you think Israel is moving forward in a good way in society?
I think so. I believe that all told, Israel is improving. Things are, for the past number of years, have been quite good in Israel. The labor market is basically at an all-time high. Unemployment is an all-time low. You have at the same time more and more people getting into the workforce and more people working, and a few people not finding jobs. That's a very, very large improvement. The two weaker populations in terms of labor market participation, which are ultra-Orthodox men and Arab Israeli women, are both having very large and significant increases in their participation in the labor market.
What's your prayer, finally, for the nation?
My prayer? Well, the prayer, everybody has the same prayer. Everybody wants peace. That's the best prayer you can always ask for.
Okay, Avi, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.